Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tristar Gym channel. Hopefully, you guys give me a quick sound check, please. Hello, everyone. Please make sure to give me a thumbs up if the sound is good, and we will get started right away with today's podcast number 38. Ask me anything 38. We're getting there. Please give me a thumbs up, and let's make sure that the sound is officially on. You guys know me. I'm always messing up the sound. You're good. You're good. Sound is good. All right. Fantastic. Excellent. I got it right. Good. Hopefully, you're going to retrieve my purple belt status as a button pusher. Hopefully, it's not too far out of reach. All right, guys. Today's episode, I wanted to start off with the Paul Daley MVP fight. I really enjoyed this fight. I know a lot of you out there complaining. I was shocked. I kind of checked online real quick what people's thoughts were, what the headlines were. A lot of people complaining about this fight. A lot of people not liking this fight. I honestly enjoyed it very much. I actually liked the fight. I thought it was a great fight. I was looking forward to it. I know that the first round was very slow, but it's a 5-round fight. Sometimes that happens. Not a big deal in my opinion. I didn't think it would be like that the whole fight. I was very confident that these two would start mixing it up eventually. First rounders, everybody was very cautious. Both fighters extremely, extremely cautious. I don't even really think they made contact for the first half of the round. The first half of the round, I don't think there was actually any contact made whatsoever. Excuse me, I'm just gonna tuck this wire away. All right. Not much. I gave it to MVP by a hair because he threw a side kick, and I felt like that round was even a draw. Like I wouldn't argue if you guys were telling me that round was a draw and then thus making the fight a draw. However, Paul Daley was moving back. I felt like he was disengaging the fight, and he should have been moving a little bit forward if he wanted to win that round. If you ask me, I'd have to give it to MVP. Why? He was the aggressor. He threw very little, but it was still more than what Paul Daley did, and he was the aggressor. Paul Daley was running alongside the fence. And the thing is, if you're moving back, I have no problem, but as long as you're scoring. If you're moving back and you're not scoring, for me, you're avoiding the fight. You're trying to delay the exchanges. And that just tells me that you're not ready to exchange because you don't feel confident. And you don't feel confident to exchange because the other guy's really good. The other guy's faking you out. He's just a little bit faster than you. He's just keeping you guessing. He's got you confused. And for that reason, I gave the round to MVP. Second round was a much better round for Paul Daley. Paul Daley actually scores a nice left hook off the fence. He takes MVP down, starts wrestling MVP. As MVP scrambling to his feet, hits MVP and seems to stun him with a nice left shot. And round 3, it was a seesaw battle. Such a great fight. Round 3, Paul Daley wins again. Round 4, MVP comes back. And you know what? I'm going to show a little bit of this fight. Hopefully I don't get flagged here. Let me see if I can get the fight going. First round, lots of people were complaining on fight night. I get it. I totally understand. Everybody complaining. Round 1 was not a big deal in my opinion because it's a 5-round fight and fighters are feeling themselves, feeling out their opponents. Now here's where it was a surprise, really surprising. Paul Daley out wrestles MVP. He just took him down, I think like at least 5 times. I think there was probably 4 takedowns, maybe even 5 takedowns from Paul Daley. And it came down to the last round, in my opinion. Now, watching this fight, I thought whoever takes the 5th round was going to win the fight. And in the 5th round, we see Paul Daley score another takedown. I'm going to try to bring it to the 5th round here. But he loses his scrambles on the ground eventually. He does score a beautiful takedown. He does score also an inside trip. There's a nice knee counter by MVP. He does score an inside trip during the fight. And here's where he scrambles MVP down to the ground, gets MVP down to the ground. This was a big moment in round 5. But unfortunately, he gets swept here, or he gets actually taken down. MVP kind of gets up, if I remember correctly. Let me fast forward here. There's some nice ground and pound by Paul Daley, and that's it. MVP gets back up to his feet. He gets back up to his feet, and he gets on top of Paul Daley and steals the 5th round. So I had Paul Daley in round 5, and then MVP comes back to steal it. And that was a crucial moment in the fight. I think the most judges saw that way. 3 rounds to 2 for Paul Daley. 3 rounds to 2 for MVP. With Paul Daley leading round 5. Round 5 there's where he gives up his back. This is where he lost the round. Everything was in control. Everything was in control until MVP scores that go behind. And I felt that he stole. MVP steals round number 5. And you got to give it to him. He won that fight. In the end, it was a very, very close fight. a seesaw battle, no doubt. Nothing to be ashamed of. Both fighters competed very, very well. Excellent battle. I was super entertained. I really liked the fight. And I'm a bit surprised with all the complaints. Everybody's complaining about the fight. I think it's because they wrestled a lot, and a lot of people don't want to see strikers wrestle. But in my opinion, that's not a problem, because these guys are mixed martial artists. The reason why they're striking is they're always fighting another opponent who's spent many more years grappling and doing jiu-jitsu or wrestling, and they have to use their background. However, when you're fighting somebody with equal amounts of striking background as you, it ends up often as a wrestling match. It's not uncommon to see two wrestlers box and to see two grapplers strike. It's not uncommon. I remember one time I was watching an interview with George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. They were on stage together. It was kind of like a sit-down interview, and a brawl broke out between the two, and they started wrestling. Two boxers, and once they got into it, the conversation got heated. And they started fighting right there in the middle of the interview. I can't remember if it was Smoking Joe or George Foreman. If I remember correctly, it was George Foreman and Ali. Anyways, nonetheless, they started wrestling. They started grappling on the ground. They stumbled all over the ground. I remember Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. Once upon a time at a press conference, they met face to face, and all of a sudden, Mike Tyson throws a punch, and then it's all grappling and wrestling and pulling on each other. A lot of people think that's fake, but I don't think it is. I think that when you're in close proximity, it's natural to grab, but also boxers will oftentimes grab each other in a street fight because they know the danger of the other guy's punches. And oftentimes grapplers, another great example, Abu Dhabi. I can't remember who it was that was fighting, but this is old Abu Dhabi. This is one of the first Abu Dhabis. Two really good grapplers. And I remember one guy was just always snapping down his opponent, but he was kind of slapping him at the same time. The other grappler got pissed off, and they started fighting. And it was all boxing. They broke out into a fight in the middle of the Abu Dhabi match, and it was just punches. There was no grappling. You'd think that their grapplers they're gonna grab onto each other and shoot a double or pull the guy into a body lock and maybe try to bring him to the ground and beat him up there. No. They started punching. So for me, it's not uncommon to see two strikers wrestle. I wasn't surprised in the least, but I really did like the fight. I did enjoy it. So I'm gonna turn to comments now. I want to hear what you guys thought of the fight. Please let me know what you thought of the Paul Daley MVP fight. Mr. TJ Combo says, terrible fight. Now, TJ, why would that be a terrible fight? What was it about the fight you didn't like? Fight was bad. A lot of you guys MVP loses to a wrestler. Well, look, Tony Shades, that is possible. If Paul Daley was taking him down, and Paul Daley's not, his forte is more striking than wrestling, I do see him having trouble with a lot of grapplers, a lot of black belts, a lot of jiu-jitsu guys. I would like to see him against Neiman Gracie eventually, or like a Rory, of course, or a Fitch. And these are going to be tough fights. Now, I know he's going to be fighting Douglas Lima next. Douglas Lima is more of a striker. He does do takedowns, but sparingly. It's going to be an interesting fight, but it's probably going to be all stand-up. That one fight, I think, is going to be mostly stand-up. I don't think that Lima's going to be shooting frantically. I think he'll get a body lock here and there and score a takedown. There will definitely be some takedowns from Lima. It wouldn't surprise me that he does, but he's gonna stand his ground with the striking. Where I think Paul Daley, his whole game plan was avoid the striking and take him down completely. I don't think Lima's gonna come in with this strategy. I think Lima's gonna say he's gonna come in striking, and if he sees the opportunity for a nice takedown, he's gonna take it. However, guys who are centered around takedowns, like a Neiman or a Rory McDonald or a Fitch, it's going to be a problem for MVP. I think it's going to be a serious problem because they have very good ground games. All these three names that I named have very, very good ground games. And they'll probably want to exploit his takedown defense. So, with that said, I enjoyed the fight. Thought it was a good fight. Thought it was a good decision. Could have gone... it was a very close fight. Let's just put it that way. Super close fight. All right, guys, let me hear your comments on that fight. If not, I'm going to turn it to questions, and we can kick it off and start answering whatever kind of questions you guys want to go through. Daley has scrappy takedowns, and MVP still couldn't... Oh, I think you mean crappy takedowns and still couldn't stop it. Well, Tommy Haas, I don't think they were bad takedowns. I think the reason why they scored so well is because, Paul threatens you with the striking. He got MVP to stand upright. And they were surprising because, you know, nobody expected Paul to shoot. I didn't expect Paul to shoot, and I don't think MVP really thought he would shoot. And, you know, lo and behold, his takedowns are better than most people know. You know, no, we didn't know that his takedowns were, you know, he did a nice inside trip. I think it was round 4. Scored a beautiful inside trip. Not a very common takedown. And, well, at least not in the octagon. And I thought he scored it beautifully. And it was flawless. It was fantastic. So I think his wrestling is improved. It's improved very much. We need to talk about Cain and Ngannou for us. That's from Venom Musk. Yeah, that is a good point. I did see that fight as well. I saw the short uppercut by Ngannou. What impressed me by that uppercut is how much power it had from such a short distance. Very short distance, lots of power. Big win for Ngannou. I saw the buckle. I saw Cain's knee buckle. It looked like he was injured pretty badly. I thought it was a good stoppage. I'm sure Cain didn't realize it at the time because, you know, he had just gotten hit. But I think when he sees the video, I think he'll agree that it was a good stoppage. Ngannou would knock out Cain once I heard. What? I knew that Ngannou would knock out Cain once I heard Tupac. Well, I'm not sure. I didn't watch the fight with any sound, so I'm not sure if he probably came out to a Tupac song. I'm not familiar. I didn't listen to the commentary. I just had the sound off that time. MVP versus Stylebender. Whose striking is more efficient? That's from Prakul. Close call. You know, they're not in the same category, but pound for pound, I like Stylebender. I think he's more diverse. I think he has the low kicks. I think eventually he'll get the job done. Not an easy fight though. Very difficult fight. Page will have problems with Rory and Lima. Their takedowns and ground game are much better than Daley. How good is how good is Crone? Stand up and still needs to improve. Obviously, Ortega versus Crone would be great. Ortega versus Crone would be a great fight. I don't know if that will happen since Ortega is trained by the Gracie family, so I doubt that would happen. I did see the Crone fight also. He fought Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy. Now, I've trained with Bruce Leroy back in the day. George had him on the Ultimate Fighter. He came to Tristar for I think he spent about close to a year with us. Very good striker, long-limbed, quick, diverse striking, you know, lots of good variety of kicks and striking. I just think that Crone Gracie's experience is just too much for Caceres. Crone has been trained at a high level for too many years. He's been training at a high level very intensely for too many years. I had picked Crone for this fight. Not to underestimate Caceres, but eventually there will be a body lock. Eventually there will be a tie-up. And just the experience level and knowledge is way too much. Caceres he's a good athletic guy, but when it comes to the grappling and wrestling, it's just going to be way too much by Crone. You know, I think Crone beats him on a regular basis. He's just another level. He's a world-class jiu-jitsu and MMA fighter. And so is Caceres. He's a world-class MMA fighter, but it will eventually be funneled to the grappling and wrestling. And Crone is just leaps and bounds ahead, like really leaps and bounds ahead. Hall versus Gracie, who wins? That's from MMA Boxer. Well, Hall, MMA Boxer. You know, I don't like to talk about my fighters. I train with Hall, so I don't like to talk about the fighters I train with on this channel. So I'm gonna have to sidestep that question. So I'm just gonna remind you all why I don't do that. It's just because it's too. I don't want to make it a gateway to what's going on in the TriStar Gym. You know, I like to protect what my fighters are doing, and of course, they're fighting these individuals in the future. So I like to keep it. I like to respect what's going on in the practice room. Mr. Zahabi, could you tell more about stretching? Well, I'm gonna keep talking about the fights, the events, and then we'll get into those training questions if possible. How do you feel about the physical wars such as Luque and Barberena fight? That's from Joseph. Joseph, thank you for that question. I saw that fight. What an amazing fight! That was a fantastic fight. One of the best fights of the year already. Seesaw battle. If you guys didn't see that fight, make sure to go check it out. Stunning ending, amazing finish by Luque, and just a brilliant fight by both guys. It was mostly a stand-up affair. Some nice scrambles on the ground, but at the end of the day, Luque was more efficient. His output was higher in the end. In the end, I know that Barberena was leading on the scorecard in terms of significant strikes. At least that's how they counted it. I don't like to use the count because I find that the count can have a lot of mistakes. You can't always see which shot landed, and even though if you might land more strikes than me, it doesn't mean your strikes were more impactful, they were more damaging. It doesn't mean that. So you can't go by points. We're not playing Nintendo out there. You can have two significant strikes. I can have one, but with my one strike, I did more damage. But it didn't indicate to me that Barberena was more busy. However, I find that when it came down to the home stretch, Luque just took it up a notch, and just the exchanges were too much. More exchanges per minute were coming from Luque's side, and eventually he overwhelmed him and caught him with a very powerful knee. So incredible fight, very, very competitive until the end there. Crone looked amazing. That's from Tripped. Yes, that is true. I think he did look amazing, and once he got to the back, I was very confident that there was no escape. Escaping the back from a Crone Gracie, you're going to need a world-class level of jiu-jitsu, and I didn't feel that Caceres had that level. He's a great MMA fighter, but just the level of jiu-jitsu is just way too much. Is Cain's body beyond repair? That's from Justin Ninja. Well, you know what? I'll tell you something. His physique looked incredibly different. That's the first thing I noticed about him. His physique looked totally different. He was never a shredded guy. He was never a solid-looking guy. But he looked more, I hate to say out of shape. I don't want to say out of shape. I know he's in great shape. I know he's got great cardio. I know he's tenacious. I know he's got the athleticism. I know he moves very well. But he didn't look he's in his prime. He looked like a guy who's aged. He looked like a guy who's, maybe he's injured and that's why he can't train as much. And he looks like a guy who's not as fit as he used to be. And that often happens, not because guys are lazy. I don't want to give you guys that impression. It's probably because he's injured. He probably has an injury he's not telling anybody about, and he's got to work around it. Probably can't put in the rounds of sparring, and maybe he's got bad knees, maybe he's got a bad jaw, and he just can't get hit anymore. And now he's just going to do fitness and pad work, and he's just going to go in there and roll the dice. A lot of fighters end up like that in their career, especially after they've had a lot of wars. What they do is they kind of say, I'm not sparring anymore. I'm done with that part of my life. Or I'll just do a few rounds just to tune up a little bit before my fight. But it's going to be with guys I trust, and it's going to be like a watered down version of what we used to do. And that's understandable. And it's not because those fighters don't have the hunger anymore. It's just literally because the body is about to expire. The body has had max amount of punishment it could take. And, I can get a $500,000 payday or whatnot, and I can step in there and roll the dice. Maybe it goes my way, maybe it doesn't. I'm not fully prepared, but I'm a veteran, so I know what to do in there. And maybe Cain is at that part of his career. Maybe he's at that level where he just can't prepare like he used to. Because in my opinion, he didn't look like a guy who did 50 rounds of sparring and conditioning and 100 rounds of grappling, wrestling. He didn't look like one of those guys who did that much work. For us, why don't you see arm drags in MMA? That's from Alvaro. It's just a setup. You're never going to put your hands on a guy's shoulder in the same way you would in practice. So it's just not you will see it from the guard. You will see it sometimes when they're pressed up against the fence. Funny you say that. I was just being pressed up against the fence yesterday, and I did an arm drag. And I don't usually do arm drag in up against the fence, but I hit one yesterday, and I was like, just telling myself that you don't see it very often. And George hit an arm drag against Johnny Hendricks in round 3, I believe, from the guard. It does happen from the guard. Sometimes it happens so quick people don't notice it. But it is obviously a much more standard maneuver in wrestling, straight wrestling. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Why fight Ngannou from all people? That's from Venom Musk. Well, you know what? I probably think he was gonna go for the takedown. Now, obviously, in round 1, he went for the takedown, got caught with a short uppercut. But if Cain got him on the ground, it would have been classes in session. It would have been a classes in session. Cain would have mauled him. Cain would have just ate him up. A guy who, in my opinion, can beat an Ngannou is like I'm forgetting his name now. Sorry. Brock Lesnar. Pardon me. His name slipped my mind there. Brock Lesnar is either going to get knocked out in round one or he's going to maul Ngannou in round one. And that double leg is nothing to snicker at. You know, I know a lot of you guys are like, no, Ngannou will probably just catch him with an uppercut on the way in. Maybe, absolutely right. But if he doesn't and he gets taken down, he'll get subbed. He'll get crushed. He'll get subbed. He'll get overwhelmed. It's going to be one of those fights, you know. It's going to be one of those fights if the striker doesn't land early and quick and gets pushed up against the fence, he's going to get lifted. He's going to get dropped on his head. He's going to get mauled on the ground. There's no getting back up. What else we got here on those fights? Lots of great fights the last few weeks. What else we got here? All right, lots of questions coming in. I'm trying to find one in regards to the fight. Would you like to see Nate Diaz versus GSP? That's from Avi Mac. No, you know, he fought Nick, and Nick is bigger. He's Georgia's size, so I think that's the only fight that makes sense. Nate, I think there was a time and place after he beat McGregor. Maybe could have made sense, but right now I don't think it's a fight that fans or UFC will get super excited about. All right, what else we got here? Brian Barberena. What is Anthony Smith's best strategy against John Jones? That's from KWY. Listen, I did a whole breakdown on that fight, so I'm not going to go over it now. But listen, I did check my past AMA. Or I did a whole thing on this fight. Look, I just think John Jones is too much. You know, like him or hate him, at the end of the day, I just think he's too much, too skilled. Striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, each realm. He's got each realm covered. And I just see him taking it. You know, I just see him taking it by a landslide. GSP versus Ngannou. That's from Mr. J Combo 7. They have to offer him a lot of money. I don't think there's enough money in the world to do that fight. Honestly, I don't think that fight will ever happen. Mo C, can GSP beat Ben Askren? That's a great question. You know what? I'd love to see Ben Askren go on a win streak. I would love to see him go on a win streak. And, you know, if I know he says he'll never fight Tyron Woodley, but let's say, for instance, imagine Tyron Woodley retires and Ben Askren goes through a win streak and he becomes champion. And he becomes this like unbeatable guy and he's got a perfect record. He never lost to anybody. That could be a fight that excites GSP. He's got 0 losses and he's on a win streak and people think he's the greatest grappler / wrestler to ever enter MMA, period. Forget just the octagon. The octagon, the ring, anything. He's the greatest. That I think can motivate GSP because at the end of the day, it's all about motivation. You know, George has done many, many training camps in his career. So very difficult to motivate a guy who's done it all. King Genius, Ben Askren with maul GSP. Well, that remains to be seen, my good friend. It remains to be seen. We haven't had that happen yet, so we'll have to wait and see. Coach, how much money would it take to have you fight in the UFC? That's from International Review. I don't know. You'd have to be a pretty penny, you know, and I have to stop doing what I'm doing. It would be complicated. I get that question a lot, so I've answered in the past. It would be tough, but it would be a pretty penny. Yes, it would. Robert Whitaker versus Prime Michael Bisping. That's from EMCBB. I would like Whitaker in that fight. I think he's more diverse, and I think he's just quicker. He has more quickness. He has great speed, great eyes. Bisping's a very dangerous guy, but at the end, I would have to pick Whitaker for that one. Okay, guys, I just want to give a quick thank you to my sponsors. Monster Energy, thank you for sponsoring this channel. timtam.tech, the #1 high-powered massager for elite athletes. Make sure you pick one up. They're half off right now. They're at $200. Make sure to pick up. I think I just cut my feed here. Pardon me, guys. Okay, no, we're back on. Sorry, I saw the red flash. I got a red signal here that distracted me. Make sure to pick up a timtam.tech. They're $200 now. Make sure to pick one up. Go to jujiclub.com. Pick up my instructional videos. Pick up this t-shirt. You're supporting this channel when you're shopping at any one of these places. They put a premium. We know that when you guys are buying, okay, we know you came from YouTube. Thank you very much for all the guys supporting this channel. Thank you. It is very big help. And I want to keep this channel going. I want to have a lot of exciting things coming down the pipeline. And I actually want to talk to you mention one of my ideas that I have for this podcast that I thought would be really interesting. You know, I get a lot of people, excuse me, that, you know, they come up to me often and they tell me like, I have a problem with this guy. I have a you know, they have a beef with this guy, or they got into an altercation with this guy and they want to fight this guy. And they always ask me for advice. You know, what should I do? And I always tell people, do not fight. Like, the only time you should fight somebody is if you can't walk away. You're cornered. Like, you went to see a movie and some guy's like, excuse me, he's harassing you. He wants to fight you. He's in you. Whatever reason, you know, maybe you stepped on his shoe and he's just a psychopath and he wants to fight you. And you're like, hey, pardon me, my apologies. And you try to walk away and the guy still wants to engage you. And as you try to walk away, he's closing the distance on you. I think you issue a warning and you get ready to defend yourself. You issue the guy a warning, hey, step back, man. I don't want to have to fight you. And if the guy keeps stepping forward towards you, I think it's time to engage. And I always tell people that. Like, people ask me, hey, when is it time to fight? I always tell them, walk away, disengage. Fighting, especially if you've never done it before, it can be deadly. Literally, it can be deadly. Either you kill the guy or he kills you, or somebody gets severely injured, or if you're lucky, it's just a little scuffle and everybody walks away safely. Now, most of the time, that's what happens, okay? You guys get little bumps and bruises and people walk away. But believe you me, you can die in a street fight, okay? People die. You know, people die in a street fight. It happens. You punch a guy, he hits his head on the curb, he's dead, he's paralyzed, you broke his jaw, you end up in years and years in court. Years and years in court. And it's just stupid. It's just really stupid. But once in a while, I have two guys who want to fight each other. It happens, you know. I have young men in the gym. This guy has an issue with this other guy, and I'm like, listen, guys, because these people, most people that want to fight, here's my problem: is most people that want to fight don't know anything about fighting. The guys who know a lot about fighting never want to fight. Like, I would say that's true about 95% of the martial artists I've trained with and grew up with. 95% of them avoid fighting in public as much as possible. Why? One, they don't have it in their system. They've done it. They do it all day long. You know, they're training all day long, or some guys just train 3-4 days a week. They're grappling, they're boxing. It's out of their system. They're not so charged with this desire to scrap, to have action in their life. They have plenty of adventure in their life. Now, once in a while, you get these dummies who think boxing or fighting is like what you see in the movies. You hit me, I hit you, we scuffle on the ground, we get up, and there's these funny, like, pow, ping. No, fighting is not like that. Fighting is not like that. And especially the guys who have never been hit. In their mind, when you get punched, it just makes like a pow sound, like they have in the movies. They don't feel, when you're watching a movie, you don't feel the pain. Okay, when you're watching a fight, somebody gets hit, you don't feel that guy's pain. All you see is kind of like his motion, his reactions, and you try to deduce whether he's in pain or not. But fighters are very good at hiding pain and discomfort. Fighters are very good. They're trained to hide pain and discomfort. Now, the irony of it all is that getting punched is actually not that painful. Okay, it's not that painful per se, unless you get a bone broken. If you break your hand, or you can break your face, parts of your face. Okay, especially the nose can be very tender, the jaw, the lip, the teeth. But generally speaking, punches don't necessarily hurt. What happens when you get punched? For those of you who don't know, sometimes you just get sometimes it feels like nothing. Okay, it just feels like a little bump. Sometimes you see a sparkle. And sometimes your legs give out. Like if you get hit really hard, you have this weird feeling. Hey, you get this surprising feeling that your legs are not moving properly. And it's mystifying a little bit, because I think that's just part of the experience. Even seasoned fighters, when they know they got wobbled, they know what's going on, but there's still that confusion element. There's still an element of confusion. However, it can hurt. It can hurt as well. It can hurt, especially if you get hit in the nose. If you get hit in the mouth area, your teeth, your jaw can get not your chin, not if you get chipped on the chin, but the jaw area here. This can really hurt. You can get your jaw clocked. Now I always tell these guys, like when people tell me, look, I have it out with this guy, I want to fight him. I always tell them, bring him to the gym, put on 16-ounce gloves, do a boxing match with the guy. I challenge the guy to a boxing match. At least you get it out of your system. At least you do it safely, legally, and get out of your system. And I've had it happen before. I've had it happen where two guys from an office came in the Tristar Gym once upon a time, and they were asking us to watch their sparring, and we're like, we weren't remotely interested in watching. Like a lot of the pros were winding down in practice. These guys walk in with their friends and they're like, hey, we're gonna be putting on the gloves, we're gonna spar in the ring, can you watch us? We're like, no, like do your thing. We're like leaving. And then some guy pulls out a camera and they start talking about what's going on in the office, and these two guys had a beef in their office. These guys were like at each other's throats, so they decided to go get a day pass at a gym and put on the boxing gloves and just settle the issue. And I'll tell you something, that was so we were like hearing their story. We're like, what? We're like, okay, wait, this is actually more interesting. When nobody was interested in watching you guys glove up, now we're actually really interested. And we were sitting there watching their fight. And let me tell you something, it was one of the best fights I've ever seen. Not because those guys were good fighters. And this happened like over 10 years ago in the gym. Okay, now I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Sometimes in the gym, this happens. Two guys want to settle an issue that they have. And they come in after hours in the gym when we have a ring and we have our gloves and we put on the gear and we agree to terms and we settle it. Now this happened over the years in Tristar Gym, but this is one of the first times I'd seen it from two guys just coming in the gym. They didn't, it wasn't an internal affair. And they started fighting, but these guys were not good fighters. So it was part hilarity. It was part hilarity. But it was also amazing because both these guys wanted to win so bad. You could see it. They were tired in a minute. 90 seconds into the fight, they were gassed, they were tired, but they were fighting tooth and nail. And at the end, it settled. There wasn't really a winner. It was kind of back and forth. We called it, after 3 rounds, we had called it. And the guys shook hands and they felt better. You could see that they squashed the beef. It was squashed. And I thought, that was fucking brilliant. That was really, really brilliant. I'll tell you why. It was brilliant because those two guys were, instead of doing it in the street, they did it in a safe environment with 16-ounce gloves, and they settled it. And I'm sure, I don't know if you guys know this, but after you fight somebody, it's almost always squashed after. It's almost always. Why? You got it out of you. You see the actual, you see the possible consequences. If you guys were actually out there in the street and you live out your emotions, you filter them out, it's a catharsis, it's done. Most of the times it's done. So that's why over the years, sometimes I've done, where two guys are just always at each other's throats. Tell them, hey, glove up, get in there, do it legally, do it safely, nobody gets hurt, and get out of your system. And most of the times, those guys will end up being martial artists, or they'll end up getting those ill feelings out in a safe way that builds their character as well. Because a lot of these kids, they're so ignorant of what it is to fight. They're so dumb. They have no life experience. They think everything they see on TV, that they understand it. But then when you get in there and you actually do it, the real world teaches you a lesson or two. So in the future, what I'm going to do is if I ever again have one of those episodes, I'm actually going to film it. I'm thinking about filming it, sitting down with the guys, talking to them. Hey, what's your issue with you two guys? Are we going to settle it? What do we have to settle? And just kind of let them tell their story, get in there and use combat sports to teach these young kids. And we all know that kid with a bad attitude. Like if you have a group of 10 kids, 20 kids, there's at least one who just has a chip on his shoulder. He's got a bad attitude. Maybe, he had a rough childhood. Maybe he's influenced by some superstar he's trying to emulate on TV, But one of those kind of kids, in my opinion, the one way you get through them, and you get through to them for life, is to give them some kind of real life experience. And gloving up, for those of you who've never done it, gloving up, sparring, putting on the gloves and learning what real life's about, it's one of those experiences. It's one of those experiences that can change you. It can really change a human being. With that said, guys, I'm going to take on the next question. You've never been locked up. If you keep fighting, if you in the same pod every day. I don't know what that means, Bobby Bush, but no, I've never been locked up. It's not illegal to spar. Okay? It's not illegal to spar, glove up. You sign the waiver, you pay your membership, you come in, you put your mouthpiece on, you put your headgear on, and you glove up, and you do 10 rounds of sparring or 5 rounds of sparring, whatever it is. But I'll tell you something, we do it every day. But you train somebody in combats, they're going to be far less aggressive. I don't train aggressive people. Like, everybody in the gym is so friendly, so kind. You know, yesterday I had somebody come up to me and he signed up and he trained. He had his first lesson and he came up to me after and he's like, I was so nervous. I was so scared. Thank you for today. And I knew exactly what he was talking about because I get it all the time. I get it all. I'm like, but I asked him, I said, what were you nervous about? He goes, I was so nervous, you know, the reputation of this gym. But I'm surprised. I was shocked that everybody's so nice. You know, he did the basics course. You know, we have touch sparring. We have every level. Okay, you can't just at Tristar. You can't just jump into pro sparring. You have to come to the basics course. You have to come to the touch sparring. You got to show us that you're competent, that you know what you're doing, and then we invite you to the advanced class or the sparring classes, the pro sparring. But you have to show competency. You have to show that you can hang with the pros, that you're not going to get hurt, you're not going to get beat up. And he came up to me and he thanked me, and I was like, of course, you know, like we're gonna take you through the steps. We're not just gonna throw you to the wolves. And the reason why we don't throw you to the wolves is that's what breeds bad attitudes. You know, a guy comes in the gym, gets beat up, gets his jaw checked. He goes home bitter. He goes home upset. He goes home wanting revenge. He's going home and maybe one day I'm gonna get them back. You know, he has those ill feelings. So at the gym, you know, we really try to foster a friendly type of training. And of course, the pros at a certain time throughout the year, they'll go much more intense. However, people are always surprised. But to that point, when you spar, when you wrestle, you get all that aggression out. The thing is, young teenagers have that aggression in them, you know, especially when they're 15, 16. They have those hormones pumping, you know, they want to prove themselves. They want to measure themselves. They want to test themselves. And sitting in a desk all day at school doesn't do that for them. And I understand those feelings. I get it. I went through it myself. When you wrestle, when you box, when you do taekwondo, even when you play football, like you get it out of you. When you play basketball, you got to burn that energy, that youthful energy. You got to burn it, because if you don't, they're going to find a way they're going to find a place or something to do with that energy. And oftentimes when you have a group of young men, they find mischief. You know, they find mischief. The more you know, we all been through those teenage years where risk is acceptable. You know, we accept risk. It's not scary to us. You know, we feel like, you know, even if we get caught, they're going to let us go because we're young, etc. So a good sport or a good, you know, extracurricular activity to burn that excess energy will definitely mellow out a young kid. But nothing like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing. In my opinion, nothing. There's nothing like it, at least not for me. For us, what's your opinion on bare-knuckle boxing or bare-knuckle MMA, like Pancrase could it make a return? That's from Venom Musk. That's a great question. Listen, I think that if you're a great fighter, you would never fight bare-knuckle. Why? Because you can hurt your hands. How many fights can you do bare-knuckle? Now, a lot of you are going to tell me, Coach, there's a so-and-so bare-knuckle fighter. He has 100+ fights. I agree with you. Like, if you look at, like, Letway. I don't know if you guys don't know what Letway is. It's like it's like Muay Thai, but bare-knuckle, and you're allowed headbutts. It's brutal. But they're not just punching, okay? They're kneeing, they're elbowing, they're doing a lot of clinching. A professional puncher, a guy who's a world-class puncher, like in the West here, in the Americas, we have great punchers. In Asia, they have great punchers, but they're far and few between. Most of them are great kickers, knees, elbows, and you know, they do wrap their hand, so their hand is somewhat protected. It's not bare knuckle, okay? At least not in most cases. However, when you're talking about literally bare knuckle boxing, because I've seen it, you know, I've seen it on YouTube. I think it's absurd. You're just damaging the most important assets. No world-class boxer, in my opinion, would do that in the prime of his career. Why would he damage his most important tool? You could break your hand. You could break your metacarpals here. You could injure your hand for life. Your hand might never be the same. The glove is mostly to protect the hand. It's not to protect the fighter. Plus, also, we got to factor in diseases and whatnot. I know that fighters are tested, but you can't test somebody for every single disease out there. There's always a risk, you know, when we're punching somebody barefisted, you know, you're getting it in the mouth. There's just more chances for disease, more chances to exchange blood or bodily fluids or whatnot. So I would be very careful with that. I just think it's unprofessional, just totally unprofessional. What else we got here? We got Otis. UFC Fight Pass covers Letway. Brilliant. But does this emphasize economy of punches? Yes, you're definitely going to punch less. That's true. Punching with a glove and punching without a glove is going to be very different. All right, let's see what else we got here. Body shots hurt a lot more bare-knuckle. That's from Kimpashi. You know what? I imagine they would hurt more. I've never been punched with a bare-knuckle body shot, honestly. I've been punched in the body with an MMA glove, and I find that it's worse than a boxing glove. Because I guess maybe it's the surface area. You know what? It's comparable. However, bare knuckle will make sense because these knuckles will I'll probably slip right through the ribs, right between the ribs. It's a smaller surface area. Makes sense to me. I've never been punched like full power with a bare knuckle to the body, so I would imagine it is more devastating. What do you think about karate bone conditioning? That's from Daniel. I believe in it. For those of you who don't know, karate masters, karate practitioners, they often work these two knuckles, bare knuckle. They'll hit wood, they'll hit cement bags. Like they'll just condition their knuckles, and you'll see their knuckles balloon up. Like you see the bone just kind of, like it becomes like a giant rock. And I've seen some impressive stuff. I've seen karate guys punch steel. I've seen karate guys like just punch like ice, and like I've seen some very impressive bone conditioning from karate masters, and I believe in it. I believe it's true. I personally don't wear hand wraps unless my hand is hurting. So when I hit the bag or I spar, I don't wear any hand wraps. I believe that hand wrapping weakens the hand. It weakens your hand. If I was a professional fighter, I wouldn't wear hand wraps unless my hand was hurting. So I always tell guys, all my professional fighters, they think I'm nuts. Most of them think I'm nuts, and they all wear hand wraps. I tell them I think it babies the hand too much. I would wear it occasionally because on fight night, you're going to wear hand wraps because the glove is smaller. So I would wear it occasionally so I feel normal. However, I would wear it probably like only 10-15% of the time. I wouldn't wear it often. Again, if my hand is healthy, I'd wear 10-15% of the time. If my hand is hurt, I'd wear a hand wrap. I'd let it heal. Once it's healed, I take the hand wrap off. I believe that's how you should go about all bandages. So if you're wearing knee braces, a lot of people put that neoprene sleeve under their knee. I always ask the fighter, is your knee hurt? If it's not hurt, take it off. Let your stabilizers do the work. If your knee is sore or you feel like you had a tweak in your knee, wear them. They warm up the knee. They're very good. However, if you wear them all the time when your knees are not injured, because I know guys who wear them all the time, they just wear them. I say it's not good. Because one day you get caught in a position and, in a situation where you don't have your knee pad on, or you're just creating a downward spiral where your knee's getting weaker and weaker because your sleeve is doing all the work. Your knee sleeve is doing all the work. So I really like to be as natural as possible when I'm training, and only wear those kind of support devices when I'm in pain or have an injury. All right, lots of questions and comments popping in here. Vin Faki asks, when are you coming to Australia, inshallah? Well, Vin, I would love to come to Australia. I've been there about a year ago. It was an incredibly long flight. I don't look forward to doing that flight again, even though I loved my time in Australia. Lots of great people in Australia. Such a beautiful place. Very good place for jiu-jitsu and martial arts. However, it was such a nightmarish flight. And you guys know me. I don't like flying too much. So I will eventually get there again, I'm sure. But I might have to stop in Hawaii for a few days. Will we ever get to see Lomachenko Will we ever get to see a Lomachenko of MMA? That's from Fauzi. Yes, I do believe eventually you will see a Lomachenko in MMA, a guy who's reached that matrix level. That's eventual. I should say it's inevitable. Now the kids are starting to train from a young age, and one day there's going to be a kid who started from the cradle and he's going to make it all the way to the top, and he's going to have understood MMA at a higher level than anyone else, and he's going to look like a Lomachenko. Do you follow the BJJ tradition of only promoting someone to black belt only if you are a second degree black belt yourself? That's from Abby121. Yes, I wouldn't promote somebody if I'm a new black belt. Actually, you're not allowed to. You have to be a black belt for at least 6 years, if I remember correctly, before you give somebody else a black belt. Now, I've issued people black belts because I'm a long time black belt myself. However, I still to this day always confirm with John Danaher. So I call my black belt, the person who gave me my black belt, John Danaher. I always call him and promote him, nominate somebody that I think deserves a black belt. And then he'll tell me he agrees or disagrees. If he disagrees, they don't get their black belt, which has happened. I've nominated guys who didn't get their black belt, and he just felt that they're missing a thing or two, or just a little bit. Now, we are very conservative. Our line, John's line, my line, we're very conservative. We don't give black belts out very easily. Okay, so it's you got to be special. You got to have understood the positions. You got to be a guy who's dedicated a lot of your life from jiu-jitsu. And you gotta know the positions. Like, it's crazy to me. Sometimes I meet black belts that don't know certain things that they should know. You're a black belt, for goodness sake. You're a black belt. A black belt's like a PhD. And I feel like when I roll with John's purple belts, they're black belts from other schools. Like, they're the level of black belt. They're purple belts under John, but in my opinion, these guys are as good as any other black belt I've ever rolled with. They're killers. They're scary. They're frightening. Like, you're fighting them, you're tooth and nail. I'm on a black belt a long time, and they're giving us really like incredible difficulty. But these guys are so well trained that when they go in tournaments, they sub black belts on a regular basis. It's unbelievable, in my opinion. So I give white to brown. Without asking for any advice. But when it comes to that black belt, I gotta get another black belt's opinion. So that's how I recommend it. So if you're a black belt and you haven't been a black belt for 6 years, in my opinion, don't give any black belts out. Give from white to brown. If you feel that there's somebody on the mat training under you that deserves a black belt, but you're still, maybe let's say you're a black belt for only 2 years, you should go ask another black belt or the person who gave you your black belt and nominate them. Do you consider my student to be a black belt? Should we give him our black belt? And, just get a consensus. Maybe you ask your trainer, and if you're out of touch with your trainer, ask another fellow black belt that has been a black belt for at least 6 years. Somebody who understands the system very well. And from there, take it from there. Don't just give people a black belt, because the worst thing to do is to give somebody a black belt and it's not recognized from other places. Now, I've lost students like that. Some students, they were not the black belt level, but they found another trainer that would give them a black belt. And they'd be like, hey, that guy wants to give me my black belt. I'll tell him, look, that guy wants to give you your black belt because he wants you to come and, promote his brand. It's a whole branding thing, like, do you really want your black belt that way? That's up to you. Like, I would never want my black belt that way. Personally, I would never accept it. I would never want it that way. I want my black belt because I'm a legitimate black belt. What else are you wearing the belt for? So luckily for me, it's very far and few between, and I have a no gi system. So you see this here, we have a silicone band here. If you're a blue belt, I give you, because a lot of my guys do no gi, so I give you white to brown, no gi. And your last year, before I feel like it's time for you to get your black belt, I make you put on the gi, teach you the basics of the gi. For those of you who know, like, I've moved away from the gi, even though I did gi for a good while, for many years. I just don't prefer it as much as I do no gi. So I do a lot of no gi. A lot of my guys are going up no gi. No gi is getting more and more popular. We give belts at Tristar, but we give the band, we give you the belt. So you're an official blue belt. I give you an actual physical belt. I give you an actual wristband, just so I can keep track of my students. But when I give you the black belt, I have to have you, you got to know cross strokes, you got to know sleeve drags, you got to know collar drags, you got to know you got to have a good year of basics. Gi basics, because I don't feel I should give you a black belt if you don't know certain things in the gi. It's just part of our tradition. But then again, I'm not going to burden you with 10 years of gi training either, especially if you're an MMA guy. So that's how I view it. What makes combat sports so appealing? Do you think it's mostly for the spectator to feed their ego, or for appreciation of art form expression? That's from Dame. Dame's asking, why do people watch MMA? I think that's what you mean. Well, I'll give you my answer, and I think I watch MMA for very different reasons. I want to see what works. I personally don't like to see two guys beat each other up. I hate it, especially when the two fighters are fighting. There's not really much skill, and they're just beating each other up. I don't like to watch that. Like a lot of people, sometimes they say, you see that fight, it was the fight of the year. And it's the worst fight I've ever seen. It's just two guys, going rock'em sock'em. In my opinion, those kind of fights, they're gross. A lot of people that criticize MMA, I think it's barbaric. When I watch those kind of fights, that's what I see. I see a barbaric sport. I watch MMA because I want to see what techniques work. What really works. What's really going to make you able to defend yourself. That's really my emphasis. And of course, it turned into a career for many of us. Now we want to earn a living. But we're still researching. We're still studying. Like MMA has taught us so much about martial arts. We used to think, a certain thing would work in self-defense. Now, after the MMA revolution, we all know it. Okay, we all know that it's not what we thought, and that's the thing. You can think something makes sense, theoretically. Then when you go out there in the real world, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. People who have never been in a fight think they can fight, or they're the ones who actually want to fight the most. You get a guy who's starting, he's talking a lot and he wants to, maybe he's in the. You see him in the parking lot, he's acting real tough and real strong, and because you took his parking spot accidentally or whatnot, or maybe you offended him somehow, you cut him off in traffic, he follows you to the parking lot, and this guy in his head fighting is like the movies. But when he finds out that it's not, he's gonna have learned a real life lesson. Theoretically in his mind, he thinks he's gonna punch you, and he's gonna do like in the movies, but he doesn't know who he's messing with, maybe, or maybe he goes his way, maybe he doesn't. But fighting is not how you picture it in your head. There's a lot more to it than that. And it's funny. I work with a coach who was born in Philly, and he's talking to me about. He's much older now, and he was talking to me about what it was like when the Rocky movie first came out. And he says he's an older fellow. He says I watched the Rocky movie in theaters, and I was from Philadelphia. He says when we walked out of the theater, there was all sorts of fights breaking out. This is him telling me about what it was like. Imagine what it would be like to watch Rocky 1 or 2 in the theater. Imagine watching Rocky 4 in the theater. That's what he basically was telling me. And in Philly, no less, in Philly. And he was telling me all sorts of fights were breaking out after the movies. And that's just that's craziness that goes on in your mind. You're watching something on TV or in the movies, and you think in your mind, this is what it's like. But once you get a taste of real life, it's not like that at all. And a great proof of that is what happened in UFC. UFC turned martial arts on its head. The Gracie family turned martial arts on its head. This is from that kid Alberto. Do you think Chael Sonnen versus Ryan Bader would have been a way better fight than Fedor and Bader? I feel like Chael didn't try against Fedor. I disagree. I think the Fedor, heavyweights, anything can happen. It's just heavyweights, man. Just anything can happen, and Bader's just Bader's time. I think Bader would have been very similar to Chael. He's just too quick, too fast, too powerful, too quick. And it's just his time right now. He's going to shine. Coach, how do you stay motivated to train hard? That's from Ross Eddy. Ross, you know what? It all starts in your head. What do you tell yourself in your head? It all starts by how you talk to yourself. Everybody has a voice inside. Here's what I do when I have something I know is, let's say I got to form a new habit. For me, training, it's a habit now. For me, getting up and going to training, it's a joke. I love how Charles Duhigg defines a habit, or how he explains it in his book. He wrote a book about habits, and it's quite a long book. It's tedious in my opinion. I prefer the summary. I really recommend the summary because the summary kind of gets right to it. You can get the gist of the book in about 45 minutes, half an hour, depending on which summary you buy. But the summary I found was better than the book. And really what he says is that, look, habits are formed because this is his narrative. This is his theory, okay? He says the brain is kind of creating a loop. You're doing something on a regular basis. It wants you to save energy. You're going to run. It's like, imagine you brush your teeth every day. Okay. Do you debate every day whether you're going to brush your teeth or not? No, you just get up and you brush your teeth. You don't think about it. Why? You've brushed your teeth so many times, it's become a habit. Now, what's this thing called habit? Well, Charles Duhigg says, look, your brain has created this circuit. It wakes up in the morning and says, here, play this program, run this circuit. And this circuit We've wired your brain so that we know you're doing it every day. But this time when you do it, we're going to do it in a way that saves you energy. We're going to make a more efficient circuit because we know you're playing it all the time. You're constantly brushing your teeth and your mind doesn't know why. Again, this is Charles Duhigg's narrative. Okay, he's trying to explain to you the phenomenon that he's observed. He's trying to say that in his mind, it works like this. The brain creates a circuit. You have a trigger. Then you have, I'm forgetting, but there's 3 parts to the cycle. You have this cue, you have a trigger, and then your brain goes into this action. Then you have this reward. You have the sensation that you accomplished something. Now, how long does it take to create this loop? Now, there's a variety of opinions on this. Some people say 3 weeks. Some people say 3 months. I think it has a lot to do with the activity. But I like to use the rule of thumb of 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, so for instance, let's say I'm trying to create a new habit. I always tell myself, look, I got to tough it out for 3-4 weeks. In 3-4 weeks, this is going to be easier and easier. So I'm very good at self-talk, self-motivating myself. So for instance, let's say, I don't know, whatever it is, like I got to get into the habit of checking on my bank account every week, whatever it is. Okay, I'm the type of guy, I hate to look at my bank account. I hate to look at numbers. I hate numbers. Numbers make me dizzy. Okay, excuse me. One thing I always disliked in school was numbers. Like I feel like when I stare at numbers for a long time and I have to think about numbers and count numbers in my head, it makes me tired. However, if I run that narrative, if I keep telling myself that, I'll be shy from numbers. I'll get shy from numbers. So I got to give myself a more positive way of looking at it. Just flip it on its head. I like to, when I tell myself, when I manage my numbers, I feel at peace. I feel at peace. Things have been paid. I paid everybody I owe. I paid my creditors. And when I look at my numbers, when I follow my numbers, I feel at peace. I make sure that I don't forget to pay this guy or that guy. Tristar it's a big company. We got a lot of creditors. People bring us t-shirts to sell. People bring us bottles of water, food. I got to make sure my creditors are paid on time. And I hate to see somebody cross somebody in the gym and I forgot to pay them. I hate that feeling. So I always like to make sure that everything's paid on time. Rent is paid on time. Electricity and all that stuff. But, of course I have a manager and all that, but I got to oversee it. I got to look at it. I got to count, the inventory. There's a business side that I dislike. I love to train. I like to walk in the gym and just train. However, there's a positive side to it. If I take care of my numbers, I feel at peace. That's it. I just tell myself that, take care of the numbers, you'll feel at peace afterwards. And after doing it 2, 3 months, 4 months, just telling yourself that, at the end of the day, you look forward to doing your numbers because you want that feeling of peace, that rush of peace. So it's really one big part of forming a habit is how you look at it. Just really your attitude. How do you look at it? How do you approach it? And there's a lot of pet peeves of mine, but it just, you overcome them by changing your narrative and just kind of biting the bullet for a short period. However, I find people fail because they think that short period is going to last forever. Like for instance, let's say you want to make training a habit. Well, the first 3 weeks are the toughest. But if you don't know that, you're going to think that, hey, I can't live this cycle. So let's say you're in your second week. You're waking up, you're feeling a bit sore, you're feeling a little bit of low energy because you worked out, your body's in a recovery stage. You're not used to feeling in this recovery stage. So you make the mistake of thinking that this is what training does to the body and it's going to do this to the body forever. It's not. This is actually a very short phase that you're going to live through to reap all those benefits. But if you know that, you could tell yourself, in 3 or 4 weeks, this is going to become easy. I won't have this soreness. I'm going to feel better and better. The more fit I am, the more energy I have. That's what I tell myself. The fitter I am, the more energy I have. Whereas some people work out and they feel tired the next day and think, oh, training makes you tired. They make this false association. I need a powerful association. I need a strong belief towards these new habits I'm trying to fulfill. I need to remember that this is a short period of time that's going to be painful, but look at all the benefit I'm going to reap afterwards. It's funny because Donald Trump at one time said something in the media. I thought it was crazy. He said, look, you only have a certain amount of energy in the day. So if you exercise, you kind of eat up some of that energy. See, look at that narrative he had. He has his belief, which I totally disagree with, by the way. I think it's very short-sighted. He says, look, you have this much energy in a day, and if you train, you eat up some of that energy, so training eats up my energy. I'm the president. I need to have my energy. He is totally wrong. Now, I'm not saying that you can't train and feel worse the next day. Absolutely. But there's a much smarter way to go about it. Now, listen, I always tell people that training produces energy. The right amount of training creates more energy. So if you're at a level 7 of energy and I give you a 5-10 minute workout, make you do jumping jacks or make you shadow box or whatever, you're going to be at level 8. You're going to be at 8.5. You're going to feel great, Your body's pumping hormones, adrenaline, your body's moving now, you're warmed up, you're feeling great, you're feeling alert, you're feeling better. So I think Trump was being very short-sighted in that comment, and I think it was very discouraging to the nation, the people who were influenced by him, listening to him, thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to adopt this philosophy. It's totally wrong. Totally wrong. You will have more energy. The fitter you are, the more energy you have. Fit people have more energy than people who are unfit. There's no question to this. Ask any trainer, any expert in exercise science. They're going to tell you the same thing. It's taking small steps, increments, and getting to that level. The people who fall flat on their face try to do too much too early. That's why I always tell people consistency over intensity. Consistency. Intensity is good once in a while. But the holy grail, that magic sweet spot is how hard you train. People say, how hard should I train? Train only as hard as you can so that it doesn't affect tomorrow's workout. Tomorrow we have to train again. Tomorrow you must train again. Tomorrow I can't break that habit. That habit has to be a daily one. All right, what else do we got here? This is from Muhammad. Still high carb, low fat, and mad fasting? Yes, my brother. Yes, I am fasting. I haven't eaten anything. I'm just drinking this coffee right here. This morning I worked out a little bit. It wasn't an intense training, so I didn't eat anything at all. I kept fasting all day. And what I do is I eat a little bit of carbs right before wrestling tonight. Tonight I'm going to wrestle, do jiu-jitsu, do a bunch of rounds, and then I'll have one meal. So basically, I only eat right before an intensive training. So this morning's training wasn't very intensive. It was more technical stuff. Didn't need anything at all. Don't feel I need it. But if you're going to do something that's anaerobic, if you're going to do any anaerobic activity, in my opinion, you do need grains. You do need carbohydrates. I've tried it many different ways. In my personal opinion, it works best if you have granola or some type of grain and go train. I think grains are good to eat close to training. Right before or right after is the best time to eat. And that's the way I do it. I've talked about it a few times on this podcast, so I won't go into it in detail. But for me, it works really well. And I feel very, very good. Hi, Coach. How will the chemistry between Maya and Ben Askren be like? That's from Abu. That would be a phenomenal fight. That would be, listen, guys, I would pay the top dollar, what is it these days? Like $100 for like the top mega fight of the year. I would pay top dollars to that fight as a fan. Okay, maybe it's only going to be the hardcore fans watching, the more hardcore fans. But if you know anything about jiu-jitsu and wrestling, you're going to be watching this fight. Like if you're a hardcore fan like me, that would be a phenomenal bout. And what would excite me more is if it was no time limit. You guys know me, okay? For those of you guys who have been listening to this podcast for a long time, I think it ain't settled till it's no time limit. The truth of the matter is, MMA is a sport. It's the closest thing we have to fighting. But the time limit has a major influence on who wins the fight. Major influence. And especially when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Because jiu-jitsu, like I talked about, recently, I'm not going to go into it again, but jiu-jitsu was created under no time limit. Vale Tudo fights was no time limit. And if there was a no time limit fight, I would think Damian Maia comes out on top. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. This would be a great fight. Phenomenal fight. With time limits, maybe Ben Askren takes it. But even then, I'll give it to Maia. Even then. However, no time limit, I would have to go with Maia. Do instructionals help me if you don't have quality of coaching in my country? I would like to travel to another country so I find a great instructor. That's from Mr. Combo. Mr. TJ Combo, yes, definitely. Get a lot of instructionals. Particularly, go to jujiclub.com. Get my instructionals. They're $25 each. There's a coupon code. Put Zahabi5. My last name is Zahabi5. Get $5 off. And listen, It's 45 minutes long, but it's jam-packed. It's like a 3-hour video condensed into 5 minutes. 45 minutes. It's straight to the point. There's no delay. Take a pad and pen. It's all golden moves. Every single move is a golden move. And I have my past preventions, and I have my reverse del Hiva lockdown. If you get those 2 videos, study them really well, your guard is going to jump 50%. It's going to get 50% better at least. And I'm hoping to release another video and not too long. I don't want to put a timestamp on it, but I'm thinking of doing butterfly guard. I got a lot of nice sequences from butterfly guard that complement those 2 other videos. And probably after that, I'm going to do an omoplata video. And I'm just going to keep it going, slowly. I just don't want to put a timestamp. I don't want to get rushed. I know you guys, once I talk about it, I get a lot of emails asking me when it's going to come. I don't know. I don't want to put a timestamp, but hopefully, let's just ballpark it around the next 30 days. Hopefully, I'll get it out there. All right, but please don't hold me to that too strictly. What is your favorite fight of all time? That's from Isam. Favorite fight of all time, barring fighters that I train. Okay, let's do that, because then I'll have too many to name. Favorite fight of all time. Wow, man. Tough one. The one fight that jumps to mind, again, fighters outside of the fighters I train, because then I'll have to name you 100 fights that are equal. I love them equally. I would have to say Khabib versus McGregor is the first one that jumps to mind, because Khabib showed grappling and wrestling like maybe nobody. No, I shouldn't say nobody, but he showed the incredibleness of mastering grappling and wrestling together. Whether you say it's sambo or jiu-jitsu, he showed the mastery of grappling, the brilliance of grappling and wrestling together. And listen, I love striking. I'm a striker, okay? But there's something special about grappling and wrestling, and not just grappling and not just wrestling, but the fusion. For those of you who know me, you know I love the fusion. I hate seeing jiu-jitsu on its own. I hate seeing straight jiu-jitsu. Like guys who are just jiu-jitsu don't have a single takedown in the arsenal. And I also don't like just seeing pure wrestling. Like I'll still watch pure wrestling. I still watch pure BJJ. But when I see an athlete who could do both, I'm really fascinated. I find the exchanges to be just better, just funner to watch and superior. It's superior grappling. But also, it's, George used to tell me something really interesting. He's like, look at the human hand. It's made to grab. It's not really made to punch because it's not that robust. Oftentimes when you punch, you break your hand. Now today we use technology to avoid that problem. But the truth is, the hand is made more to grab. And that's why he says that's probably why so many of us have a fascination or the instinct to grab when we're fighting. Like if you take 2 people, never trained before, don't know anything about fighting, and they fight, sure, they'll strike each other. I'm sure they will, but they end up grappling as well. So we're a grappling-based creature, in a sense. And, oftentimes, you'll see the striker outdo the grappler. It's not uncommon, especially with the rules, because after every 5 minutes, we stand the striker back up. However, there's something to be said if we're in close quarters and there's no time limit. I think grappling, the importance of grappling and wrestling go up a mega notch. Okay, so if let's say me and you, maybe we're in a restaurant and we get into it, we're gonna fight. Well, guess what? You're not gonna be able to use karate. You're not gonna be able to do what Machida does, Wonderboy does, MVP does, keep a long distance and pick me apart. You won't be able to. Why? There's a table behind you. There's people. There's a chair. There's obstacles in the way. We're gonna lock up. Most scenarios, when you're in a fight, most scenarios, not all, of course, you can find yourself in an empty parking lot. You can find yourself in a very open space. Maybe you're in a field or whatnot, and maybe you're on a basketball court. It can happen, absolutely. However, I find that most altercations happen with obstructions around you. Most of them, not all. You could be at a park and then all of a sudden a fight break out. However, most of the time you'll be in a public social setting. Maybe you're walking out of a movie theater. Maybe you're, in a crowded place and a fight breaks out. Long range attacks are not going to work. It's going to be mostly grappling and wrestling. And it changes even from ring to octagon. Like, for instance, I do a lot of karate. I do a lot of Muay Thai. I do a lot of boxing. I do a lot of kickboxing. When I'm in a ring, I don't use much karate. When I'm in a ring, like a boxing ring, I just find that it's too tight for me to use my long distance. And I find Muay Thai has a much better place for me. When I'm in my 30-foot octagon, in TriStar, we have a 30-foot octagon. There's so much more breathing room. The karate attacks start to come to life more. So that's just my opinion. Who's the best BJJ coach, top 5? That's from Malik Utala. Well, number 1, I have to put my trainer, John Danaher, in my opinion. He's the most cerebral and well-rounded grappling coach. Wrestling, judo, throws, grappling on the ground, passing, guard, and leg locks, of course. Nobody understands leg locks more than the Gracie Academy. So, the Henzo Gracie Academy, John Danaher in particular. He's changed the world of leg locks. The world of leg locks will never be the same again. He's completely disrupted the world of leg locks in grappling arts. Okay, so he's surpassed, in my opinion, every leg locker in the past. His students have surpassed them. They've subbed them literally. They've beat them in competition, and also the Danaher Death Squad. They've reinvented the system. There are new ways of going about leg locks they've never seen before. And after that, who would I say? Wow, there's so many great names that jump to mind. I've worked with Marcelo Garcia. I've worked with Braulio Estima. That's definitely, he's definitely up there. I've worked with Henner Gracie, was really impressive as well. Hodger Gracie, absolutely, no doubt, one of the greatest instructors. Braulio Estima is also a phenomenal teacher. Braulio Estima, super, super teacher. And of course, I can never leave out, I'll probably put him just second to John Danaher, is Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall's technique is pure brilliance. It's really well thought out. It's pure genius, really, and it's unique. People haven't thought of this. Like, he's really reinvented a lot of positions, a lot of techniques. He's really reinvented them. He's taken old moves and made them better. And there's only Ryan Hall that knows these systems. Like, he's really that special of a grappler, and he's doing things nobody understands. He's really at another level. What else we got here? Okay, one person needs to be kicked out, but you know what? You did remind me. I want to thank you, Gabe. You're getting kicked out. I don't know why you'd want to get booted out of this channel. Hide user on this channel. Okay, now you're hidden from the channel because you wrote like some childish comment. But you did remind me to invite people to the dorms. So tsdorms@gmail.com. If you want to come train at Tristar Gym, if you want to stay 1 night, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, email tsdorms@gmail.com. Let them know that you want to come train at Tristar Gym. They're going to send you back a quote for 30 days, 10 days, 1 week. And they have different options. They'll let you all know about the options. Plenty of people come from all over the world all year round to come train with me and the team at Tristar Gym. And whoever you are, wherever you're from, we work with you. And it's just a good time of training. Lots of training going on. Lots of people visiting the Tristar dorms, and a lot because of this channel. A lot of you heard of it from this channel, so I want to thank you all for the support. And I always enjoy people coming down from all over. They bring about different skills, different levels of experience. Some guys are experts, some guys are even just starting out their martial arts experience. So we get all levels. What else we got here? All right, guys, we're at an hour and 14 minutes. We have hit it hard, this podcast. I'm going to wind it down now. We're going to do just 1 or 2 more, and then we'll call it. For us, what do you look for when considering promoting a purple belt to brown belt? That's from Cami. Great question. A brown belt knows a lot of the curriculum. He knows almost all because purple belt, you're advanced, but brown belt, the game deep. It's just, I feel your combinations, you don't blend them together like a black belt. A black belt knows the game even deeper, okay? But in my opinion, a brown belt should know almost as many techniques as a black belt. Like, if I'm giving you a brown belt, you know so many positions. Like, 90%. Let's say 90%. And you need that extra 10, but you also need to connect them now. You got to work these sequences. You know the sequences, but you don't work them smoothly like a black belt. A black belt, when he rolls, he looks like it's poetry. You're looking at poetry. He should be so coordinated. He should be so efficient in his movement. not mechanical and overpowering. He shouldn't be overpowering. He shouldn't be just using his athleticism. Which judo techniques do you think are useful in grappling or wrestling? I think almost all of them except the headlocks. You know, a lot of judokas will grab the neck. From side control, they're going to go into a scarf hold. I find it, you try that against a really good jiu-jitsu guy. Let's say 7 out of 10. Let's just be generous and say it's only 7 out of 10 times he's going to take your back and he's going to put you in a worse position. Hi, Coach. I love your podcast. Don't stop doing it. What do you think about benefits of training in altitude? Also, would you ever consider giving a seminar in Israel? That's from Jonathan Wiseman. Jonathan, well, now you're going to bring me in the Middle Eastern conflict. No. Listen, I would give seminars all over the world, but you know what? If I did a seminar in Israel, I would want my Palestinian friends to join me. I would want to show that, Palestinians and Israelis, we can train. I'm not Palestinian, I'm Lebanese, but it would have to be one of those things. I would give a seminar in Palestine, I'd give a seminar in Israel, and I'd want both sides to come to both events. And that's the only real way I would do it. You know why? Because I really believe, Lebanese, we're Semitic as well, for those of you who don't know. And not all Lebanese are Phoenician, but about 80% of us. And I'm also Phoenician. I've had my genetics tested. If you look at Canada, we have such a great fusion. We are so multicultural. We are. Like, for those of you who've never visited Canada, Canada is like a trip around the world. You come to visit Canada, especially Quebec, and, walk around town. You're going to visit the entire world. We are so multicultural, and we're so accepting of other cultures. And I really feel that it's a shame that in the Middle East, and I understand it's more complicated than I'm making it, and I understand that the history goes back, it's a long history. But here on this side of the world, Muslims, Jews, Palestinians, Christians, we all get along. Atheists, secularists, agnostics, we all get along. The rule is the law. We have a law and we live under that rule. And people tell me, oh, Jews and Palestinians will never get along. That's such a myth. That's such a lie. We get along on this side of the earth. We get along very well. And for those of you who don't know, Muslims and Jews have lived together for hundreds and hundreds of years peacefully. It's such a myth that we're incompatible. It's such a myth. For those of you who don't know Maimonides was the most important Jewish thinker. He is literally, I think, probably 99.9% consensus that Maimonides is the greatest Jewish thinker in history. Of all Jewish scholars, nobody, I think, I've never heard a single Jewish thinker argue that Maimonides was not the greatest Jewish thinker in history. In my opinion, I think I have to, get a really good Jewish scholar to agree with me here, but I'm not pulling one up on the top of my head. But Maimonides is, accepted as the greatest Jewish thinker, and he wrote in Arabic. Why are all his books in Arabic? The man wrote in Arabic. Why? Because he lived under Arabic rule. He lived under Islamic rule, and he lived peacefully. Most interaction between Jews and Muslims were peaceful. Now, yes, there was wars, like every nation. However, there's also a close relation, and because we share much of the same religion. Now, I would have loved to see the Palestinian people. I know if a lot of you are going to find this, point of friction, but I would love to have seen them welcome their Israeli brothers, welcome them. And whether one is ruling over the other, because the thing is, the most powerful group is always going to rule. That's how it's always been throughout the ages. If our army is bigger and stronger, you live under our rule. Now, the rule has to be humane. It has to be humane. Every single nation has to have the same rights and rules and same amount of human rights. Now, there's always the seesaw battle where we want to give you your rights, but we don't want you to take over. And there's always that balance that has to be observed. And I understand that the ruling party doesn't want to be taken over because they're scared to be subjugated. Everybody is always frightened. If you look at history, it's almost kill or be killed. It's almost like we got to subjugate you so nobody subjugates us. We got to subjugate you so you never subjugate us. And I believe that that's the dynamic that's a bit lost on us now, because we don't have this type of mentality where countries try to take over other countries. We have the Geneva Convention, we have the UN. Like we are past that point where countries are trying to muscle. We're not fully past that point because it still does happen. It still does happen, no doubt about it. Territories are usurped still to in the modern day. However, it's done at a much small. It's at a fraction of what happened in history. It's not even a fraction. It's a particle of dust. Throughout history, people would always take over land, because they want to create their empires. The bigger your empire is, the less likely you're going to be subjugated. That's just a dynamic. I'm not a historian, but that's just a dynamic that I've observed. And I feel that, especially after World War II, there was a time and place where we had to be more inviting. People had to be more inviting. Why? Because World War II was, and I'm just talking about the Palestinians and Jewish conflict. I'm talking about as humans, we dropped the ball. We did the worst thing in human history. Maybe not the worst thing in human history. Maybe there were other wars I'm not aware of. Okay, I'm sure there were other massacres. There was the Genghis Khan era. There was the Romans. What they did to the world, and I get it. There were other, but here we have it documented. We're documenting. We're filming. We're more conscious of human horror. We've seen the ugly side of man. And we've dropped, there's an atomic bomb at the end. I mean, it's such pure evil. I still watch videos of World War II and it blows my mind. How on earth did we lose our way? How did we get to this level of killing? And because it's been documented, because you're seeing it, you're not hearing somebody who saw it and you think, oh, maybe he's exaggerating. No, we are seeing these horrors. Like, there's just no denying that they happened. And I think I hope it was a wake-up call. I hope it's a wake-up call, because when I watch that, I'm always thinking. That's why I get a little frustrated when I hear how Trump talks. Like when he said something I really disliked. He said, "Look, he's talking to Kim Jong-un, and he said, I don't remember the exact quote he said, but in reference to North Korea, he said he'd burn it up. He said something like that. He said, "Look, I'll decimate it, or I'll crush North Korea." And I thought it was such an ignorant statement. We're talking about women. Innocent women, children, people with daily lives. People have nothing to do with Kim Jong-un. They are victims of Kim Jong-un. And you're telling us that if this guy gets on your nerves, you're going to eradicate all these people. I think that's somebody who has no idea about the evils of violence. He has no idea about the evils of violence. I feel that this is a person who's lived in a 5-star hotel room his whole life, or a mansion or whatever. He's lived in the lap of luxury. He's been put in this bubble. He has no real outside contact with the real world. He's always seen the real world from this window, living in the lap of luxury. He's never gotten his hands dirty in his life. He's certainly never been in a fight in his life. He certainly did not serve in Vietnam. He had his bone spurs. He has his bone spurs in his foot, supposedly. I remember one journalist asked him, which foot was it? And he was like, I don't know, check the record. He's some rich white kid who never had to go to war. And now he's president of the United States. He's seeing the world from afar. And really, that's just a question of ignorance. Like what we were talking about earlier. A lot of times, theoretically, you see something, you think it makes sense. Then you go out and step out in the world and try to execute. And you get a whole bunch of data. You discover a whole bunch of nuances you had never known about before. Think about the first time you learned how to drive. You learn how to drive from a book. You took your theory exam. And then you get behind the wheel and you're like, whoa. Just turning the steering wheel, I'm learning all sorts of things about what it feels like to turn a steering wheel. Well, multiply that by a trillion. Like, I think about how hard fighting is for MMA. Then I think about soldiers of the past when they fought with a sword. That's actually cut a human being's limb off. They had to stab somebody. What it was like to see all those carcasses, to see all those arms chopped off, to see all that death. To go and you're training with your friends and family and siblings and people you grew up with. Then you go to war and half of them get wiped out. And you're seeing them get butchered. Like, psychologically, what that would do to a human being. Shooting from afar is so scary already. But imagine having to get up close and personal and having to get your hands literally bloodied. Psychologically, I think that's just obviously another level of human trauma. But I think World War II, because it was so heavily documented, it was so visually horrifying, that I think it gave a wake-up call to humanity. At least it did to me in my generation. I think us growing up, watching those videos, we were like, wow, this is the worst idea ever. World War II was the worst idea in human history. At least it seemed like that to us. Maybe there were other wars that I'm not aware of that were more bloody. However, they weren't documented. There are lines in a book. There are lines in a book, and you can imagine them in so many ways. However, when you see the footage of World War II, it's Shocking. And that's why I found it so ignorant that Trump will talk like that. Like, that's just a guy talking. That's just a guy who doesn't know anything about violence. That's just a guy who has never got a bloody nose. He just never got punched in the mouth. And it would do him so good. It would do him so good to have an actual experience. Because I feel he lives in the realm of ego, you know. That's why, like, if people talk good about him, he feels good about himself. And if people talk bad about him, he feels bad about himself. He strikes me as that kind of person. However, when he talks about things, he has no idea what he's talking about. He's talking about pure ignorance, but he doesn't know. The sad thing is he doesn't know how ignorant he is. He just has absolutely no idea. All right, guys, I think it's time to wind it down. I'm going to do one more because I don't want to end up on such a dark note. So let's talk about one more, hopefully. Something a little bit more. GSP versus Trump. Joke, LOL. That's from Empire of the Exile. Thank you for cheering me up. That's a great, great note to maybe end up on here. Okay, let's end up with, what are we going to end up with? Oh, we got a super chat. Hopefully it's a good one. You changed my mindset when you said make time for fitness or make time for sickness. Yeah, I always say make time for being fit or make time for being sick. You may have saved my life. I'm healthier now, better workout prep and post dinner. Great job, Sarah. Great to hear. Sarah, first of all, we don't have many women in this channel, so I want to thank you for joining this channel. And Sarah, I'm very happy to hear that. And that's the power of narrative, guys. That's the power of having a positive narrative. You know, I do a lot of lectures. You know, sometimes people ask me to come in and do a lecture for like companies and stuff like that. And I always talk about number one thing is attitude. And the attitude is shaped by your narratives, the things you tell yourself. People who tell me, you know, I don't have time for fitness. I don't have time for trading. I don't have time. That's the number one excuse on the board. I don't have time to eat well because, you know, eating well, you got to get organized. You know, to make a salad is a lot more complicated. It takes a little bit more time than just ordering fast food. However, I would say it doesn't save you time. You think that's polluting your mind. Excuse me. I say if you eat fast food and you don't exercise, you're going to have to make times for doctor's appointments. You're going to have to make time for taking drugs and living through those side effects. Being healthy and fit takes less time. It saves you time. You do more with your time. When I'm healthy and fit, I get more done in my day. Like, look, I haven't eaten all day. You know how much fasting, how much time it saves me? Like, I got a lot of things to do in a day. Fasting saves me time. That's part of my nutrition. I have a high energy. I got a lot of things to do today. I'm fit to do them. Being fit and eating well saves you time, makes you more productive. If you're unproductive, if you're feeling lethargic, if you're feeling weak, it's because you're unfit. You're unhealthy. So, and if you eat badly, guys, if you eat junk all the time, make time for a disease. Let's see how much time that saves you. It's going to cost you a lot more time. All right, guys, I got one last super chat. I don't know what it is. I'm going to open it up, and that's going to be the last one. Advice for someone constantly has strength of injuries and losing hope. That's from that Indian dude. Easy one. I've talked about it a million times. Get the Supple Leopard. Go to timtam.tech. Check out all of our products. Keep your body healthy. Read the book. Read that book. Becoming a Supple Leopard. Get it. Bite the bullet. Get it. It's a picture book, for goodness sake. It's really easy to read. Kelly Starrett. Becoming a Supple Leopard. I'm not going to talk about it because I talk about it too many times on this channel. And get a Tim Tam, my friend. Keep your body loose and limber. Alignment is everything. You will find it all in the book. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm signing off. I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you.